Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're going to talk about why I think unschooling is superior to traditional schooling or a rigid curriculum at home when you're homeschooling. I believe that the future leaders of tomorrow are going to be outside the box thinkers. They're going to be creative problem solvers, leaders, good communicators, and I think unschooling excels at all this. They are individualized. They know their self. They know what they're good at, what they're bad at. And I don't think the school system today supports that. So we're going to go through all these different reasons, and it's by far not a all-inclusive list. It's going to focus more on the efficiency of unschooling and how, compared to traditional schooling, and how much more free time and less stress you have and why. So if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned and let's dive in. Today we're talking about the myth that a real education needs to be slow, stressful, and hard. I'm going to show you how unschooling is faster, deeper, and more effective than regular schooling, and why it frees up your family to live fully. So if you're still thinking that a real education needs 8 hours a day, you're 10 steps behind. Traditional schooling is a slow death for curiosity. Unschooling is gasoline on a fire that's already burning. Today I'll show you how less pressure leads to explosive growth and a lot more joy at home. So let's start off with a quick review on what unschooling is, and in particular what intentional unschooling is. So unschooling, for those of you that are new to this, is child-led, interest-based. No rigid curriculum, it's just pure learning flow. You're going with what the child's interested in, and they get to choose what it is, what they want to learn about. You're not going to pressure them. You're not going to do any of those things. However, with intentional unschooling, and this is something that we talk about a lot on the show, is 10 out of 10 parental support, where you expose them to different concepts, ideas, subjects, really anything that you think might be helpful. You give them the tools to be able to learn. So anything they need, maybe like books or an app or a computer, the internet, something like that, so they could be able to learn more about whatever they want to learn about. You give them encouragement and the freedom to thrive. Your job as a parent is to find what they're interested in and give them the support to be able to do that. You're also going to, as the parent, try and show how learning some things might be valuable. For example, if your kid doesn't really get into math so much, you might point out all the time when you're doing stuff like, oh, look, we got to do this and we need to do some math. So let's do it. Particularly when it's something that they want. I like to do it with money jars where they get to spend their own money and they have to do the math to use the money, and they get a candy bar out of it or whatever they're buying. At least that's how we started and introduced it. So your job as the parent is to guide your children into what you think is going to be beneficial for them, but you're not going to override them in any way. If they don't want to learn something, you're just going to back off and just continue to point it out in a non-threatening way. If it becomes contentious, I'd just drop it completely. So now that we understand what unschooling and intentional unschooling is, you now have a world of possibilities, and you get to see what your child's going to build, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the reason why it's going to be fun is because you're not going to have to do as much pressuring and all this craziness. You're just going to let your kids be natural learners. And that's what I want to talk about. Let them be natural learning machines. Every child is born curious. They're ready to devour the world. They want to know everything. They got a million questions. Most parents don't like the questions. Me, however, I do enjoy the questions, unless I'm in the middle of trying to get them to bed. And then it can wait until tomorrow. But when you force boring material, it shuts down their drive, and it's that simple. We don't want to shut down their drive. In fact, we want to jump into whatever they're asking questions about. They genuinely have an interest. They're intrinsically motivated, and we're going to dive in with them. We're going to facilitate the learning in many ways, especially when they're younger. We're going to answer questions. We might look up stuff and watch a video with them, or maybe we go explore something, or maybe we do something together. That's how you explore it. It's authoritative, not authoritarian. You're learning with them, even if it's something you don't know. And honestly, it's a lot of fun to review stuff that I haven't reviewed in a while, or dive into something that I really don't know. And we get to learn together, and they get to see that I'm always learning. And I think that's a good model. Moving on, deep interest equals speed and mastery. That's the next topic. Deep interest equals speed and mastery. I think passion supercharges memory, focus, retention, period. Hard stop. If they're interested in something, they are going to learn it quickly. And if they struggle with it, dive more into it. Figure out where they're misunderstanding or what they're having a hard time with. And it's a good exercise. Intrinsic motivation burns a lot hotter and longer than any reward or punishment. When they want to learn something, they will just dive in. And your job is to dive in. And one thing that I think is very beneficial about the way we do school here, or do education, I should say, is that you really set the benchmark a lot higher than schools. Schools want competency. They want the bare minimum to move on, right? D's get degrees. However, with unschooling, and particularly intentional unschooling, we're really going with something that they're very interested in, mastery. We want them to have a very firm grasp on a topic because we want them to understand it. They're going to retain it better. They're going to have a better understanding of the world. And I think that's really beneficial. For example, our sons blitzed through the Cold War history stuff. They went through all the World War II stuff because they wanted to, not because anyone assigned it to them or told them they had to. I put on the documentary. That's what we did, is watched a lot of documentaries. We also talked about stuff. We also have books to support them. But we put on a documentary, and we just watch it for an hour a day, or whatever it was. And we do that until the series was done or they weren't interested. And they were able to just retain so much. It just amazes me every time. That's why I bring this up almost every episode, I think. But it's amazing how much they learn when they're interested. And if you use TV as a tool, by the way, screens just get eyes. Screens get attention for kids. We don't have screens on all the time. We use it as a tool. So if early afternoon, we normally don't have screens, I offer to provide a screen, and we watch something that might be considered quote unquote boring to most kids. Hey, a screen is on and they're going to pay attention to it and they actually want to do it, even if it is quote unquote something that would be normally considered boring. In the middle of the day, it's considered exciting. And I think that's pretty cool. Moving on. Real learning by the numbers, why unschooling wins. So here we go. I've done a whole episode on this about how schools only deliver about 2.5 hours or 2 to 3 hours of real learning a day. And that happens over about 180 days out of the year. That's how many school days there are. I think that's silly with the amount of time we invest in it. If you're at school for 7 hours or so, you also have to get there. You're coming home with homework. Where do these kids have time to do anything that they want to do? You're stuck teaching them in the evening because they have homework, right? Especially if you have younger kids and they have something that they really don't understand. So you're going to be doing some work with them, most likely. Unschooling says, well, why don't we just cut through the fat? Unschoolers easily hit 2 hours of intentional deep learning, easily 5 days a week. Let's just say 50 weeks out of the year. If we just did that, 2 hours of intentional deep learning, 5 days a week, 50 weeks out of the year, it would give nearly 10% more real learning time without the wasted hours. And I'm going to argue that kids learning through unschooling also learn faster because they're driven by genuine interest, stacking thousands of more meaningful hours by adulthood, and maybe even by the end of the year. I have to be honest. My kids are constantly learning. They're reading all the time, and they're pulling out stuff and trying to figure stuff out, and they're asking a lot of questions. And we do a lot of cool activities where they're learning. So our kids are always, always, always learning, and we really enjoy that. It's kind of our pastime. I loved learning as a hobby, I think. I don't know. I think there's very few people that are driven to learn. Like that's a drive that they have. I might be one of them. If you ever listen to the Tony Robbins stuff, he talks about the human needs, the basic human needs. And, there's security, there's comfort, there's safety. One of them's learning, and I guess it's a rare one. And I might be that. Interesting. Side note, moving on. Self-teaching is the real superpower. That's what you want to get your kids to. So once kids learn how to learn, they're unstoppable. Even without your constant input, they're diving in. This is why intentional unschooling is very important. We don't want to starve the resources. We want to provide enough resources at appropriate times to allow them to learn as fast as they can. And when they're interested, they will learn fast. So we value the tools over the tests. A lot of kids are learning for the test. We're learning how to study for any test. Learn anything on your own without a ton of people supporting you. Because we also value resources over rigid schedules. We're just going to provide resources. We're not going to go over and try and get them to do certain things at a certain time. Now, I will say I restrict things at certain times to allow for other things to happen. For example, a quiet time might be appropriate. And during that time, they can read. Maybe they can get on the computer, anything that's quiet. Afternoon might be screens, and that's the only time we get screens. And in the morning is free play. We don't do anything with electronics. And I think that gives us, it allows the day to kind of flow. Putting those restrictions on kind of open up the opportunities for more things for them to do. They might make movies, or they might make, something like that. Just being creative, writing scripts, making pictures, even writing stories. Right now, they're really big into creating things out of tape and paper and cardboard and paper towel rolls and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun to watch what they create. But having the ability for them to teach themselves is without a doubt a superpower. I know we use a lot of apps as well, and they can pick up the apps in the afternoon and learn another language. And that's what we're doing on Duolingo. We're doing a whole bunch of math concepts on Synthesis Tutor. Not a bad thing. Works out real well. We leverage free code camp to learn how to, one of my sons to learn how to code, Khan Academy, and it's zero pressure, and it outpaces standard curriculums by far. Next thing I want to talk about is the shift from drill sergeant to the strategic advisor. Yes, I'm talking to you parents. Your job isn't to force. It's to provide the battlefield with weapons and let them conquer. You become a leader, not a micromanager, and this is going to build trust like crazy. It'll be a trust multiplier. So what we do is we lay out books, apps, even people. Hey, you want to learn about something? This person knows it. Create experiences and then step back and let their genius ignite. I like to think that I know my kids really well, and I think I do, but it's amazing when you step back and allow them to lead what they come up with and what they want to learn about and what questions they have. And then you could just guide them along the way and try and point out things where you think it might be helpful. And if you do it the right way, I think they're going to be very open to hearing your advice. At least my kids have been. It looks like it's going to be a short one today because I'm already on the last topic. But last thing I want to talk about is create a home where learning and life are all one. We don't do the tug of war, the battles over completing homework or doing a worksheet or, really anything, right? We're not going to force them to do anything because we don't want them, because when you force someone to do something, they tend to resent it. What we do is we create quality time, not conflict. That's what we focus on. Genuine and powerful connection. And a lot of that time is learning about something because kids are naturally curious. And again, we just dive into it. We just allow life to happen. This might be science experiments or a deep conversation, or maybe diving into something and working on it together. No worksheets, no stress, a lot of fun, a lot of curiosity, a lot of intrinsic motivation, and a lot of quality time, to be honest with you. We could make music, and that's one thing they're learning, is learning how to read music. And I think that one's in, I think it's in Khan Academy, where they get to learn that, if I'm not mistaken. But they get to learn the notes, and they read music, and we, make some cool songs. More so them making songs for me, but there's some things that I like to do with it too. So anyways, some actionable tips for you today. 1, trust first. Assume your child will learn because they will learn. Again, they're learning machines. Just trust the system. If you're new to this, Google what deschooling is. There's going to be a period of time where your kid does not want to learn anything if they were in regular public school or just regular school in general. Because, this may not always happen, but the general rule of thumb is 1 month for every year in school, they'll reject learning, especially if they had problems. So just anticipate that. But eventually they will turn and they will start to get interested in something. And you're not going to compare them to the rigid curriculum, ahead or behind, that kind of stuff. You can use it as a reference of when they might be mature enough to be able to handle it. However, you're not trying to pressure them to learn how to read by a certain age or learn how to do a certain math by a certain age, that type of thing. Build a battlefield of resources, books, app, mentors, travel, conversations, join a co-op, do something. Get a whole bunch of people surrounding them. Have a lot of friends, different ages, group of people. There's so many opportunities to be able to learn by using those kind of resources. Let them pick their path. You just need to keep fueling their journey. That's your job. And praise effort, exploration, and grit over outcomes. I don't do any testing. And the reason I don't do testing is because it's a fake objective. It's not a real outcome, right? We want real world results. We try and keep it practical. So test scores are irrelevant, although we will eventually learn how to take tests and practice for tests. Right now is not the time. My kids are young, 11, 9, and 6. Too young for tests, in my opinion. Too much pressure for young kids. Build the creativity. I think that's what's going to be important in the future. Creativity, problem solving, teamwork, communication. These are meta skills. This is what I train my kids for. And the ability to teach themselves and change quickly will give them so much advantage in the future workforce. And on top of that, they're going to be intrinsically motivated and going over and killing it. And they know their self and what they're good at, what they're not good at. Yeah, not a bad thing. I'm opting in, unschooling the way to go. So in conclusion, unschooling is not just about different. It's about superiority. I mean, not superiority. That's the wrong way to say it. It is the superior method, in my opinion. It's the blueprint for future-ready, self-taught future leaders. Let your kids unleash their natural genius and reclaim some family life in the process without the stress. And with that, I'm going to end today's episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.